Now, the Climate and Energy Minister, Chris Bowen, was out spruiking climate change alarmism and pushing renewable energy again today. This was after yesterday launching a national electric vehicle or EV strategy with new tax incentives offering $40 million of your money so motorists can save a couple of grand on a new EV worth up to $90,000.
This is ultimately all about giving Australians better choices of cars which are better for the climate and better to drive and more cost efficient.
Now, if EVs were so practical and cost efficient, then governments wouldn't need to offer tax incentives and splurge public money on private charging stations. Let's bring in the Nationals MP Keith Pitt. He joins us from Bundaberg. Good to talk to you again, Keith. I mean, I just worry about this EV push. You know, there's so much taxpayers' money going into it at federal and state government level. If these things are so cost effective, if you're saving all this money on fuel and fuel tax, then people ought to just buy them off their own steam.
Well, this is the problem with the state telling you what sort of car to drive, Chris. So they're going to provide subsidies for the car that they want you to have, and they're going to increase the cost of the vehicles that people can currently afford. I mean, the fuel standards are one. That'll drive up the price of new vehicles that use petrol, for example. And we know we're going to have enormous problems down the track because out in the bush, guess what? EVs just won't work for us. And you make a really good point. If the EVs are so good and so affordable and people want them, we'll let them buy them and let the rest of us get on with our lives with things that work.
Look, I think they're going to be really practical around the bigger cities, and most Australians live in the bigger cities. But in places like Melbourne and Sydney, a lot of people are parking their cars on the street, so it's very hard to charge them overnight. There's all those sort of practical problems. But where people have a city runabout and they can charge it overnight, then obviously they make sense. I just don't think reams of government money should be printed off to support them when people are quite capable of making these decisions themselves.
Oh, if it suits you, knock yourself out. But AEMO has estimated you might see a 60% increase in demand at peak periods. That means a 60% increase in generation capacity. And think of all of those cables right around the country, all the way to your house, that has to be increased by 60%. It's just an enormous amount of money.
Well, that's what leads me to the second topic, and that is the shutdown of Liddell Power Station. That process is going as we speak, and it'll be offline next week. Gee, we're getting I think some worrying reassurances from the energy market operator and the transmission companies and the like, saying, oh, don't worry, we've looked at it all, we reckon it's going to be all right. It's such a fine judgment, this, to understand whether or not we will have the capacity. There's no doubt prices will go up further, but will we be caught short of supply? And that will only be tested when we get a run of hot weather in the summer, I would have thought.
Well, all of the modelling in the world never compares to reality, and reality is now here. Liddell is closing. It's roughly 1,350 megawatts, and the idea that you can replace that with a battery is complete nonsense. Batteries have to be firstly filled before they can be emptied. You can't simply turn in more coal, more steam and more output. You have to be able to continuously fill them. The idea that this will work is just fraught with danger. Well, we're about to see what happens when we close.
Well, this will impact on the whole national electricity market. And the point is, of course, that because of the uncertainty about supply, there's $700 million or more being spent. I think that's the figure, correct me if I'm wrong, but building that Kurri Kurri gas generation plant in the Hunter Valley. Now, that's been delayed by a year or more. Surely the sensible thing to have done would be to keep Liddell online until that gas generator is in place. Even if it took a government subsidy to do so, it's just crazy to shut off one, 1,200 megawatt generator when you don't have the replacement there, the peaking power to replace it.
Sounds like common sense to me. We've got one Chris with common sense, but the other Chris thinks you can replace it with nothing. Just a dream, a feeling that'll keep people's lights on. But it's just not going to happen, mate. That's just not the reality. It's physics and engineering.
Oh dear, I worry about it. We'll have to wait and see. Let's hope we scrape through, but if not, we'll be able to say we told you so. Thanks, Keith. Appreciate your time.